Hello everyone and welcome back to the Florida Relocation Guide. My name is Adam Hancock once again, and today I want to talk 2024 families and the state of Florida. I have a list of 5 metros I'm going to walk through, location, why they matter, and how to differentiate them from each other, where I think if you look at it from the right perspective, this will not only make you and your family dangerous when it comes to just an individual decision of relocation or purchasing in general, but it'll also make you dangerous when it comes to Florida education as a whole. So if one of these does not work for you, it's a lot easier, in my opinion, to find a plan B once you understand the overall methodology, if you agree with that. So I hope you find it just as valuable as that. If you haven't grabbed my 2024 Sarasota Manatee County Digital Guide, it gives all my personal recommendations for lifestyle, food, neighborhoods, new construction, and the like. So get your hands on that. And of course, if I can help you in any way in the real estate market this upcoming year, please give us a shout. Without further ado, let's hop in. Okay, number one on my list in no particular order, I'm calling St. Johns County, Florida. And if you're not super familiar, this is what people think of when they think of St. Augustine, because it's located within this county. So St. Augustine, Florida. To add a little bit more texture to geography, you're 35 minutes below the main part of that huge city of Jacksonville. And then you're about an hour and a half east of Gainesville, where the University of Florida is located, which is really your central Florida proximity. Okay, so a couple things of why I like this one for 2024. Number one always has to be schools when it comes to St. John's. You know, they're number 2 ranked public school district in the entire state of Florida, number 2 out of 68 total districts in play. But up until this year, they were the reigning champ. They've been number 1 for a long period of time. So, and that's just public schools. That doesn't count charter a lot of times, and it doesn't count private. So that's always a nice thing in a family's conversation, especially. Beyond that, this area kind of falls in like an oasis category to me of sorts. So number one, you have the city of St. Augustine. It's the oldest continuously occupied city technically in the entire United States. So what comes with that level of history is architecture and a lot of really interesting things, whether you're a history buff or not, when a city evolves. So I like that. Number 2 is I would say it's not only coastal, but it's quaint coastal. And which is kind of a lost art, no pun intended, in the world of heavy net migration when it comes to Florida, is I'm seeing a lot of people seeking not just to get near the coast, which most people do when they come to Florida, but to do it in a way that's not this crazy hustle bustle, overwhelming thing. And you have St. Augustine Beach, you have Crescent, you have Butler, and it just feels like a quaint northern beach, like you're almost like on the Chesapeake in Maryland or something. It feels very different than South Florida, the Gulf Coast of Florida. It's a completely different vibe. So it's either for you or it's not. And if that's not enough for you, then you do have this random addition of areas like Nocatee. Nocatee is not the only place you can live, but it is rare in a conversation of coastal proximity. Nocatee is one of the top selling master plan communities in the entire United States. And it's a mix of neighborhoods, downtowns, it's family friendly, it's near schools, it has activities, and it gives you more to do once you leave your individual neighborhood as far as communal amenities go. And a lot of times when you get near the beach, the new construction isn't synonymous, and these kind of family-centric homes that fit a multiple kid household because it was already mature. So the closer you get to the coast, typically there is less land to do things like that. So you add all that together, and you're 35 minutes one way to one of the biggest cities in the entire United States, which offers all that other stuff you might want or need, work, sports, etc., then it becomes a really interesting homestead for our first one on the list. All right, number 2 on our list, we're going with my hometown of Sarasota, Florida. So we're going to head over to the Gulf Coast, and we are below Tampa, we're above Naples, and we sit on a very, very coastal part of the Gulf waters there. A couple things that stand out to me for 2024. Number 1, we have to talk schools again. Sarasota County happens to be the metro that replaced St. Johns County as the number 1 overall school district for 2024. Number 1 of all of 68, and that's just public schools. So not only is there a variety in which to explore that, because there's many cities within that county, which I'll explain here in a minute, but you also, not counting public private schools at all. So, you know, I went to a school called Cardinal Mooney, you have Sarasota Christian, you have Outdoor Academy, the famous IMG sports-centric schools in Manatee County right above it. You have St. Stephen's up there as well. So a lot of options, a lot of preschools, a lot of Montessori, a lot of public charter, all that kind of thing. Beyond that, I think as an overarching thing of everything I'm going to say next, Sarasota really wins out as probably being the balanced mousetrap when it comes to almost every category. If you had to pick a homestead to the state, Sarasota wins a lot if it just if you had to pick one, your back was against the wall. It's a perfect blend. And there's a couple things within that conversation. One is Gulf Coast central proximity. You know, if you're picking locations amongst the state, you know, I would probably pick Gulf Coast waters preference-wise and in this part. Like, so beyond the Panhandle Gulf Coast or the Atlantic or the South Florida in general, the Gulf Coast, it's calm. It's benefited a lot from hurricane history, knock on wood here. Just locationally, it's interesting because it sits in the perfect spot, right? It's 1 hour from Tampa. It's less than 2 hours from Naples. You're 3.5 to West Palm. You're 3.5 to Miami or less. You're 4 to Jacksonville and St. Augustine and all that stuff I mentioned previously. 5.5 or 6 to Savannah, Georgia even. You got everything but the Panhandle. And a lot of those other cool cities are on fringes of sorts. So I like that. Number 2 is you have world-class beaches. You know, just within this area, you have Siesta Key, you have Longboat Key, Anna Maria Island. Venice Beach is next to Casperson, which is the shark's tooth capital of the world. Brohard Beach is a dog beach within the county. And then Lido sits in this like magical in-between land. And, you know, several of the beaches I just mentioned are on the top 10 lists for the entire United States. They sit right in this one metro, and it's all real clustered close together. Beyond that, world-class art and food scene. So in a relatively smaller metro, you know, it's considered the cultural coast because of how it evolved. It didn't evolve in a pretentious, this is ours, not yours land. You know, the John Ringling evolution, it was very, very art-centric. The development of it, all that kind of stuff, and it's continued to attract people that, yes, have money a lot of times, but not in an uppity way. It's a more approachable way, my personal opinion of it. There is more art galleries and theaters and music venues and everything that falls in the culture category per capita, density-wise, in this area than anywhere else in the state, when it's considered cultural coast. And then also, you know, Zagat-rated restaurants and just food variety in general, it's way more diverse than you would think an area this small would be. You know, I like the variety in which to enjoy it. That's a big one for me. So not only do you have all of that, and then, yeah, that's great if you live in downtown, but that's not the case here, right? You can enjoy that within Sarasota city limits. You can enjoy that within Venice, which Venice, I did a video a few weeks ago, one of the most underrated places you could possibly have, which is one city within that county. Western Bradenton also has like its own vibe, right? So you go up and down the coast on barrier islands or not, and you can enjoy a similar version, live there and then access it. So it's almost cities within cities. And if I have to add a little bit more to that, you know, you have a rarity of unbelievable master plan, right? I mentioned St. Johns County has Nocatee, which is great, but Sarasota and Manatee County combined, which is considered the Sarasota Metro, you have Lakewood Ranch, Florida, the #1 multi-generational master plan in the entire United States. It has like 3 downtowns, 35, 40 plus communities. The oldest home in the entire area was built in 1995. That entire area is 10 to 15 miles one way from everything I mentioned that was cool. And it's borderline becoming literally everything but the beach. You don't really need to leave. It is Pleasantville. And then they put one down in Venice, South Venice / Western Northport / Northern Englewood, that's called Welland Park. So it's like a mini coastal version, 9 to 11 neighborhoods, has its own downtown Welland. The entire area, it's hard to get more than 20 minutes one way from the beach in the entire district of Venice because of the shape of the state. And if you're like, I hate suburbia, then Sarasota also, again, this is not a huge area. It also has a unique, abundant, and controlled urban living environment. It has, if you look at pre-construction condominiums that are on the luxury realm in the state of Florida, Sarasota is right up there with like the level of new condominiums. They're coastal, there is urban downtown infill, so you can do pre-construction. There's 90 plus resale condominiums in downtown Sarasota. Downtown Sarasota is not based on work, it's based on play. So it's walkable, it's pleasant, it's art-centric, and you don't have a traffic bum rush because it's hospitality that supports people that are already there. It's not everybody rushing in for work, and you could go on and on and on. But I think, you know, I grew up in Sarasota, and I think you have a strong argument, which I'll talk about here with number 3, that there's not enough going on, or economics and jobs could be a possible issue, because the reason it's so lovely in a lot of ways is because people aren't just ending up there for work and then figuring it out. They're moving there by choice, and a lot of times that does not come with a huge industry. So you got to navigate that. But where we're going with work from home, independent, all that kind of stuff, these kind of towns are unbelievable, because the same towns that are amazing for work make it very unpleasant if you want to not be in that crowd. If you don't need to be in that crowd, do you want to be where everybody needs to be to the downtown for work? Probably not. So that's my number 2. Okay, number 3 on the list, I'm rolling right on the back of number 2 to kind of paint a picture with that context. And that is the entire metro of Tampa Bay, Florida. And this is what I meant in the intro about just overall education. A lot of it comes from geography, because when you're working through the story of relocating potentially, a lot of times you're looking at like parts of the state first. So you're choosing like which area you're going to end up in. Well, if you choose the Gulf Coast, you don't just have Sarasota as an option. You have a three-headed monster of sorts. You have Sarasota, you have Naples Metro, which includes Fort Myers, and you have the entire Tampa Bay Metro, which is 3 counties. There's nothing really above Tampa. There's nothing really below Naples and Marco Island, but the Everglades. Where Tampa comes into this conversation is it's basically like a lot of the value I explained about Sarasota, but it's a bigger city alternative. Tampa Bay is the only major metro that exists on the Gulf Coast. Sarasota and Naples are competitors in a hospitality, play first, work second market. They differentiate each other in niche ways beyond that. But if you're moving you want something bigger, you're moving from a bigger city and you need more, then Tampa Bay is your only option when it comes to the Gulf Coast. But you get all those other things, right? You still get that central proximity. You get all the stuff I explained. It's just different. So locationally, it is 2 hours from Orlando. It's an hour above Sarasota, and it involves 3 counties. It involves Pinellas, which is your St. Pete Beach. That's your coastal. St. Pete Beach, Clearwater Beach, etc. Hillsborough is like what everybody thinks of when they think of Tampa. Downtown Tampa, Ybor City, the airport, that's all in Hillsborough County. And if you just simply go north all the way across, you hit Pasco County, and it's still in the conversation. So where Tampa excels, beyond what I explained about the proximity, is one in suburban variety. What you can do in Tampa, you can't do in Naples, Sarasota because of the shape. So in Naples and Sarasota, when you go west, you hit water. So you can only go if you're exploring housing. If you go west, a lot of it's urban because both the downtowns sit on the coast, and that's your 1% land, right? That's barrier islands, that's beaches, that's downtown. It's all clustered. So imagine what kind of housing's there, right? It's either the mega mansion or the expensive condominium or the little bungalow. It's different, right? But this is a family conversation, and if you're seeking suburban viability when it comes to housing, you can only go basically east where the land's at, and maybe you can get north or south. Mostly you get on a fringe. Well, because Tampa Bay is a lot larger, you can go in 4 different directions and have competitive suburban similar housing that satiate different needs. And what I mean by that is you could say, okay, what's the number 1 overall? I want new construction. I want the most land. I want the most master plan. What if you love Lakewood Ranch, Florida, but you need to be in Tampa? Well, the one that wins out in that conversation is Wesley Chapel. So one option is to go 25 miles north of downtown Tampa, and that gets you where the land was at. So you have master plan concepts. You have Wiregrass and Seven Oaks and Meadow Point, Epperson, Crystal Water Lagoons. Most of the new construction housing goes north because they needed space. That's one option, right? Sacrifice commute. You could say, maybe I need to be close to the military base, or I just don't want to be that far from town. I still need similar housing. One option is to go east. Brandon, Riverview, Progress Village still gets that kind of housing. It's just a little bit more mature. So you got some new construction, not as much, but still that size house, that style house, and it's a lot closer to town because of the angle. Well, what if you said like, well, that's great, but none of these are close to the beach, right? I'm moving to Florida still. I get them in Tampa, but I still want some beach proximity. Well, this is where gets real interesting, because you can go west and still not be in the coastal town yet. You can go west and be an in-betweener. West Chase, Citrus Park, Town and Country, Carrollwood, that kind of area. Well, if you get to the right area, you could be exactly the same distance, 20, 22 minutes from Clearwater Beach and downtown Tampa, which becomes more rare. And then the 4th direction I mentioned, like you could go on like the bonus fringe, right? You could go southeast of Brandon and get Apollo Beach, Wimauma, save a little money. You can go slightly north of Wesley Chapel and get Zephyr Hills and Land O'Lakes and save a little bit of money. There's junior versions of all this kind of stuff. So just suburban variety is overwhelming. And that's before you even hit the coastal county. So it's like Pinellas County is almost a mini Sarasota or Naples built into Tampa Bay. So you not only get some of that, not the same, but you get some of that, but you also get a whole large metro backing you, which is very, very important if you need to work and you want industry or you just want more to do. Number 2 is on the lifestyle element. So Tampa is big enough to get all the cool stuff you'd want, right? You need a city that people want to develop in. It has to be progressive. You need a bigger populace than some of these coastal retirement towns. So it's big enough for all of that, right? It's one of the best sporting towns in the whole state. Several major sporting venues with the Bucks Tampa Bay Rays, you have the Lightning, a bunch of spring training, etc. You have soccer, everything. You have multiple theme parks. So you have South Tampa with Hyde Park Village. You have Ybor, which is like eclectic town funded based on the cigar industry. You have downtown Tampa itself. You have downtown St. Pete. So there's a lot of different places to go. Tons of stuff to do. International Mall, major airport. But the big key with Tampa, especially if you're from a large city like downtown Chicago or Manhattan or many parts of New Jersey or something like that, it's accessible. So I'm from Sarasota, like I mentioned. It's a lot smaller. I lived in Tampa for 12 years. If you had all those fun things to do and it was in an overwhelming way, to me, it wouldn't be that accessible. It'd be like, that's cool, but I don't like all that minutia. I don't want to be around a million people at a time. Well, Tampa Bay is big enough, but not overwhelming. And I think that's a key takeaway, where I don't know if I'd say the same about many parts of Miami, many parts of Jacksonville. So big enough, not overwhelming. Love that part. Beach variety is another area you have. Just, again, commonality, variety, variety, variety. The cool thing about having a bunch of beaches to pick from is that everyone typically doesn't go to the same place. So it's pretty easy for you to basically go to a different beach based on what you're feeling that day, one, but also to find places at any given time, at any time of day, any time of year, where you can get a little bit off the beaten path because people have choices. So a lot of people will go to St. Pete Beach in Clearwater, but you have Paso Grill, which I think is super underrated for kids, Paso Grill. You have Indian Rocks. You have Madeira. You have Reddington. You have a lot of different options in between. So just variety typically not only helps a buyer when it comes to housing, but it also helps a family when it comes to things to do and accessibility. And then lastly, I don't want to get too crazy here. I will end it with prep schools. So the 3 counties of Tampa, I think all of them rank in the top 25 when it comes to the 68 school districts: Pinellas, Hillsborough, and Pasco. Pinellas being the best at 16, I think. But so it's not bad, but you also have a big city, right? So the chance that you're going to be elementary, middle, and high school that are all evenly ranked in a large urban city, it's not that common, but it really wins when it comes to prep schools. It has a lot of really, really highly rated prep schools. You have Berkeley Prep, you have Jesuit, you have Tampa Prep, Shorecrest, people really like in St. Petersburg, and there's a ton of them though. So if you don't want to live in a certain place based on 100% school proximity, based on school district, you want to pick where you want to live and pick where you want to go to school, Tampa really has a nice lineup when it comes to private schools. All right, number 4 on the list, I'm going with Orlando, Florida. I wanted to add a Central Florida option, and when I see people narrow down a lot and say you're really honed in on Tampa, it's really Orlando that is the tug against those two. It's that versus that. They're not that different in location, slightly, and a lot of similarities, a lot of similar costs of living in many areas, amount of housing, things to do, etc. Now, on a macro standpoint, I do see a lot of people choose Tampa if everything's even, because it's slightly smaller, more accessible, and slightly more coastal. But a lot of times everything's not even. That's the thing, right? If you are going to a particular school in Orlando, like Central Florida, or you have family there, or it's a particular job, then I want to talk about what Orlando might be right for, based on what I just said about Tampa. Geography-wise, if you're not familiar at all, this one is going to sit, like I said, it's considered Central Florida technically, but it's pretty far south. You're going to sit 1 hour to the east coast, below St. Johns County to Cocoa Beach. And you are going to sit, but many parts of Tampa are also an hour to the beach as well, so just food for thought there. First off, theme parks. If you love theme parks, Tampa does have them, but not in this way. If you love theme parks, you love Disney, and I've seen fanatics of not just one vacation, but want to make it a regular thing, want to use those city passes and day passes and year passes, then this one is the clear favorite, not even a question, if you want proximity to that. Number 2 is suburban variety. A lot of people think Disney, tourist, but there are whole oases. I mean, Tampa or Orlando is massive. There are full-on suburbs. Windermere and Winter Garden and Winter Park and a bunch of areas that you would not believe how much they feel suburban and by themselves. Have their own things, their own little towns, and very, very family friendly, a bunch of neighborhoods clustered. So if you haven't explored that lately, that would be something to look at. And there's progressive ones like Lake Nona and all that kind of thing. It's not just Disney and not just city. With that conversation too, we do a lot of new construction because of relocation. And there's about a little over 1,200 new home communities actively building in the state of Florida. 27% of all of those communities exist in the overall macro Orlando, Florida market. So abundance is going to give you cost competitiveness. It's going to give you variety. It's going to give you style, townhomes, villas, first-time home buyers, size up family homes. And it's going to give you all of that. And in towns that have a lot less of that, it's much, much more based on supply and demand. It's much more based on the, you hear all this stuff about low inventory and all this kind of thing, which makes sellers be able to sell their homes for more to you guys as buyers. That inventory really only comes into play when you talk about existing homes. Like, they're not counting the 1,500 homes that a neighborhood's going to build. So that's going to satiate the affordable housing, and that's going to satiate the scarcity of the housing issues we're dealing with now. It's all coming from new homes, and this happens to be an area where most of it exists. Almost a third of it exists. There's tons of things to do. There's no question there. That's simple stuff. I'm not going to get into all that on this video, but there are tons of sporting events. There is nightlife. There's anything that any other city in Florida has, Orlando has some presence of. And overall, I think it's locationally, you got to really look at, if you're going to end up in like the northern part of Tampa, then Lakeland and Orlando, well, Lakeland's kind of sneaky too, but Orlando, they're not that different. It's considered Central Florida, but it's not that far off the beaten path as people describe. So number 4 is Orlando, Florida. Okay, my 5th and final one for this year's list, we're heading all the way over to the Florida Panhandle, all the way west, and talking about a little town called Gulf Breeze, Florida. And this is going to be an anomaly in the conversation of being something different. If you are looking for, like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, something that is smaller and quaint, and I'm seeing a lot of people that want to escape the minutia. That kind of Wilmington, North Carolina, coastal beach town vibe to raise your family. You don't want to be in the thick of a city. You don't want to be around a million people all the time. Then this one's a real gem. So a little backstory. My last 2 years of school, I finished at a school called the University of West Florida, which is in Pensacola. And I lived in the town of Gulf Breeze the entire time I was in school. My wife's from New Orleans, but happened to go to high school all 4 years at Gulf Breeze High School in the middle of the town. So I had a unique experience of experiencing that culture at like a formidable age. And I really saw it. I worked at a little gym called the Club. A lot of it's a military town because you have Eglin Air Force Base there. But the entry to Pensacola Beach goes through this little town called Gulf Breeze. I don't even know if there's 7,000 people in it. And it felt, the feeling of it stylistically, safe. Everybody knows each other. It is a locals vibe. It's got a surf culture with there's like a local surf shop called Interlight, cool family history with that. But I love being a local. If you've ever seen me frequenting around Sarasota or Lakewood Ranch, I'm like a locals local. I grew up near the beach. I love people that are coming here, but I like going to the same restaurants and the same places. I like the beach bars and the little corner golfer spots in Lakewood Ranch with Libby's, and I love that stuff. And that's kind of how me and my wife enjoy the town and that kind of thing. Well, Gulf Breeze has all of that. It's got a boardwalk and a beach, and everybody's parents stayed, and the kids go there. It's generational. And if you like that kind of vibe, then it's a really fun place to live. So I wanted to mention that one on the list, where, a lot of people talk about Seaside and, that whole district where the Truman Show was and all that kind of stuff. But that is, it's a lot harder to live in that kind of town than this town. This is more of a normal town, even if it's small. You have to, the reason I probably didn't make my way back there, I did heavily consider it at one time, was you do have a not so fun hurricane history with how that land sits. And you don't have as much industry. It's a little bit a disconnect to the rest of the state of Florida. But if you're looking for that, you're looking to go to a place where everybody's not going, then I'd at least check out Gulf Breeze. There's another place called Niceville, and that general area as a research item. All right, folks, that is a wrap for this week's video on the Florida Relocation Guide YouTube channel. Again, I am your host, Adam Hancock. If you happen to be watching these videos and you're not subscribed to the channel, please consider doing so. Not only does that help us in the algorithm so more people can see these videos, but it also helps you to simply see the next video I am going to put out. And we're going to try to get more and more valuable as we're going on, I think, our 4th year on the channel, and we're going into 2024. So there's that. Beyond that, if you are pondering the real estate market, buying, selling, and/or investing, relocating, new construction, anything in between, I own a real estate brokerage that's a full scale, wearing the shirt today, Sunshine State Company, covers the whole state. It's not Tampa specific, Sarasota, any of that. It's the entire state, full scale residential brokerage. And we're really set up in a unique way, just from like the evolution of what I've learned doing this a lot. We have a nice little mousetrap. We have a lot of bandwidth. We have individual agent concierge. You get me, you get broker access, and we try to make an art form and not only relocating, but navigating the economics, the investment side, the purchase side, and everything in between. So we matchmake you with someone that is the perfect fit for you. So if that sounds interesting at all, reach out, call, text, email, anything like that. And if you haven't grabbed that digital guide, please get your hands on that. We also have a newsletter if you want to sign up for that. That's kind of cool. But most importantly, thank you guys for always giving me a few minutes of your day to watch my ramblings, and look forward to seeing you on the next one.